All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to episode one of the Deep End podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Denal. So a little bit about me. I'm 23 years old. Grew up in Maryland. Went to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and currently I am working and living in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm joined by my co-host. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys. My name is Anish. I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and I also attended the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And I currently live in Palo Alto, California. So to elaborate on who we are a little bit more than all, you want to take us through how we met, or do you want me to go through it?
Yeah, I got. Actually, no, you got it.
I should probably do it. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so from my experience, this is what I remember about me and Denal meeting. We actually met through maybe a couple mutual friends. I think Denal, like myself, we both were off campus the first semester due to COVID. Obviously, we graduated last year, so that would have made us start our college years in 2020, right in the peak of COVID. So we had both, stayed at home during the fall semester and decided to come for the spring semester, and I guess we met our sophomore year, so during fall of 2021. And mind you, like during quarantine, I can say this now since I graduated, but like our first semester on campus was pretty easy going. I mean, it almost felt like school was like an extracurricular at that point, because online classes didn't have to go to class. We were just in the dorms all the time. Just wake up at whatever time you want, turn on the Zoom lecture, probably fall back asleep and keep that Zoom lecture back on. And school, like every time we have an exam, you take an exam with like 10 people or whatnot. So you really like school didn't really hit you until you started that fall 2021 semester, right? So I remember the rude awakening for me was when I took the class analog signal processing, which in hindsight, it's a class with a lot of work. I don't know about how hard the class was, but I think the sheer amount of work that it wasn't
Yeah.
as simple as, like skipping out on lectures and then showing up to the test, or maybe studying 2 days before the test and pulling up to the test and pulling a B and then walking out, right? So, I show up to the test, and I'm pretty much, I barely even touched the last question. I don't even know what's going on. Walk out of the test, walking with one of my friends, and then all comes up to us and he's like, yeah, guys, I think I got a fucking 100 on that test or something like that. And I'm like sitting there, like, look at this douche, bro, just talking about 100. I probably flunked the test. Ended up doing like 1.5 standard deviations below the mean. But yeah, I think from there, we both started, we started doing the problem sets together. Mind you, these problem sets take like 3 to 4 hours. So we got to know each other pretty well. And yeah, that's the story of how we met. Did I do good? That was accurate, right?
No, terrible. I would
It
just
wasn't
like to say
accurate.
I would just like to say I never claimed 100%. Never ever did that.
Yeah,
That was a hard ass test.
if I had the tape, I'd roll it, but unfortunately, we don't. Um,
Okay, good thing there's no tape. I guarantee I didn't say that. But
yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, we can. I
that's
guess
like
we can go
okay.
into. Yeah, I think we can go into like what are you doing now?
Yeah,
We graduated. We've been working almost like 10 months now, right?
yeah. So
Um,
like yeah, so I graduated with a degree in computer engineering, and right now I'm working as a software engineer at a company called Honeywell out here in Phoenix. Honeywell does a lot of things really, but I guess they're most famous for their aerospace division. But I'm actually not working in that division. I'm in what's called industrial automation, where we work on setting up control systems for various like power plants and gas plants. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's still software engineering, maybe a little bit lower level. I'm mostly working in like C++ and C. But yeah, what about you, Anish?
yeah. So same department as Denal. I majored in electrical engineering, so it's a little bit different. Now I work at a chip design tool company, meaning that they make tools used by a lot of major companies in making chips. Um, so yeah, I mean, basically, we own like pretty solid chunk of the market share when it comes to making software tools used to design chips. So any of your big companies like Apple, Nvidia, whatnot, they would use our tools to design their integrated circuits, is what you call it. But yeah, so you said you live in Phoenix now, right? How's that going? Do you like it? Or I remember we visited you like a couple months ago for your birthday. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
you had mentioned that like you don't live in the heart of the city, but do you think would you change that if you could now, or like do you still like it? What's the deal?
Yeah, good questions. So yeah, I've been now living in Phoenix since last July. So yeah, about 10 months, 9 months. Um, it's nice. It's pretty different to me. I've never lived like this far away from home before, so it's very different, like climate wise and everything. Also, coming out here fresh out of college, like didn't really know anyone that was out here other than my roommate who went to college with us.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, like Anish said, a few of my friends flew in last November for my birthday just to come see how it's like in Phoenix. Anish also mentioned I don't live in like the heart of the city of Phoenix. I'm kind of like in like North Phoenix, so just closer to my office. And when I was deciding where to live, I was like factoring in saving money and everything on my rent. So uh, I picked like a little bit of a cheaper location, but there's some nice places down in like Scottsdale where maybe if I were to do it again, I'd probably pick a location there just for a nicer like younger crowd and like nice new grad vibe. But how about you? How are you liking Palo Alto so far?
Yeah, I mean it's cool. I would say it's very similar to where I grew up. Um, all my coworkers give me shit because I say that I'm from Princeton, New Jersey. They think I'm some uppity, like really stuck up, like rich kid or something like that. I think from the outside, like growing up in a place like that really makes you think of how much of a bubble it is, and that bubble only really continued um, when we went to Illinois, right? We were just surrounded by
Yeah,
mostly engineers the entire time. And I think
yeah,
Palo Alto, like coming here, it's it's a very similar vibe. Especially you go around California, especially San Francisco, you see homeless people everywhere, and this place is almost like a bubble in itself, also, right? Because like I'd say like the average total compensation of a person who lives here is probably like north of 120 grand easily, right?
yeah,
I haven't seen a single homeless person here. Even the 7-Eleven here doesn't look ratchet. You know what I mean? So like it's pretty much similar to what I've been like familiar with my entire life. But that being said, I've been thinking about moving to the city too. Um, and we could talk about like moving to the city and all that because I think that's an interesting conversation either on this episode or not.
yeah,
But yeah, I guess there's some. I mean, the problem with me is I work. My company is located inconveniently in one of the more southern parts of the bay. I think that's convenient for most people, considering a company like the average age of my company is probably pretty old. Most people have kids and whatnot.
yeah,
But yeah, like I've been meeting a lot of young kids who work at my company, and a lot of them live in the city, and none of them complain about it. The commute, like I mean, the commute for them is like almost like 50 minutes one way, and nobody complains about it. So it might be something I consider more heavily within the next couple months. Also, I wanted to mention, I think I saw a reel um, like a couple of days ago. Do you see the Suns are like like one of two teams in the league that aren't in the play-in,
uh,
the draft lottery, or the playoffs? They're like one of
yeah.
two teams.
No, they're actually the only team.
Are they actually?
Yeah, the one
That
the one out of the 30 teams that they get absolutely nothing out of this season, pretty much.
that's crazy. It's tough times in Phoenix. Yeah,
It is tough times
and
in
the
Phoenix.
Cardinals aren't doing too well either. So I mean, I guess they
Yeah,
have to
but
deal with that shit too.
fuck the Cardinals, though. Nobody cares about them.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can go through. I mean, like, why did you want to start a podcast? I know we were talking about like
Yeah.
um, you're so used to like the system in college,
Hmm.
almost like go to class, you go to class, you go to the gym maybe, and maybe you
Yeah.
drink on the weekend, or for you, I guess you drink on multiple times on the weekday too.
Right.
Um, but why do you want to start a podcast? I know we shared the same, pretty much the same things, but what would you how would you answer that?
Yeah, there's definitely like a couple reasons for this. Like one, not sure how all the viewers and everyone can relate, but me personally, I've become pretty addicted to scrolling on TikTok or Reels, and
Yeah.
it just seems like such a time sink. I'm not really like doing anything with my life, to put it bluntly,
Right.
when I'm doing that. So this is like a good outlet to get escape that and talk about something meaningful or just educate myself and hopefully others. And even apart from that, uh, starting a podcast is just like I don't know. It just seems interesting. Like I feel like you and I share a lot of ideas and sense of humor that could be seen as interesting. So we'll see how it
Right.
goes with that.
For sure. I think for me it was like you kind of like I my idea behind it is I think I wouldn't say we're average kids. We're definitely above average. Not to like toot my own horn or toot our horn or whatever. Um, but I would say that there are a lot of kids that probably feel the same way where, they graduate school and then, like you go to your 9 to 5 and you suddenly realize there's all this time that you can now tap into, especially if you're not living at home, right?
Mhm.
And you don't have to
Yeah,
care about when you get home or when you leave or all that. You have all this time that you can tap into, and I think showing our adjustment to that change in life, which is a very big adjustment, by the way. Um, I think a lot of other people can relate to it and kind of enjoy and come along for the ride with our experience, right?
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I would say that. I mean, uh, I think the beauty with what we have to offer as co-hosts, one, I think we're pretty funny, right? And
yeah,
like two, I think we have, a passion for a lot of various topics, right? That being music, sports.
yeah.
We're trying to understand, politics and all that, all the funky stuff that comes with that. Um, and yeah, and obviously we're both in the tech industry, which is only growing at a rapid rate. So I think our opinion on that is also uh, valid.
Yeah.
So you want to tell them about how we're
Yeah.
we're planning on tackling all these topics throughout the course of the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. So our plan is, per episode, we'll probably like focus, like hone in on like one main topic per episode. Like for example, this episode will be talking about the tariffs and everything that's been happening economically recently. But other than that, yeah, our format for the rotating topics will be things like politics, tech, sports, music, post grad life in general, relationships, and we don't have like a fixed rotation or anything, but we'll kind of just go as we see it, and we'll have some guest speakers maybe that can come in every now and then. Um, we'll try to pick out some of our friends that we think are experts in some of these topics and have them join us for a few episodes here and there. And yeah, target audience wise, like we're trying to shoot for honestly anyone could tune in and listen to this, but I think the people that could relate to us more are, maybe kids around our age, 22, 23, like fresh out of school or finishing up school. Just want to see how other people are living their post grad lives because it's something that we don't really talk about. It's just something that you think about in your own head. So it's kind of nice to have an outlet for that.
Yeah, especially I think men in general.
Mm-hmm.
We like I think our college group chat is pretty active, but I think there's still a lot of feelings that men feel like it's normal to internalize, whether it be negative, positive feelings, whatever the case might be, right? And
Yeah,
like it doesn't have to be a therapy session every time you talk to your friends, but sometimes just I think us giving people almost like a glimpse into our heads of what we're thinking about on the day to day. Sometimes maybe someone's listening to it on their commute to work or something. And they're like, you know what, that's interesting. Like I thought about that the other day, and they're talking about that, and that's basically what we're trying to achieve, right?
yeah, that's
Um,
that's pretty much the goal.
yeah. So with that, you want to talk a little bit more about what you do at work and whether you like it or how
Yeah.
you feel. Is there anything that caught you off guard when you showed up to work? I know you started work like pretty short after graduation, right? You didn't really have
Yeah,
time to chill or anything.
yeah, and like I had a couple months, month and a half. I started like right at the beginning of July, after graduating in May. So I guess yeah, I had some expectations, going into the software engineering field. You think like it's a pretty chill, laid back job, like pays well, nothing like insanely stressful, but definitely it's been a little bit eye opening here at my first job. Definitely a lot more work I've been doing than I expected. This could also be like specific to me. My situation was a little bit different. I didn't get hired in like a cohort or anything. I was like a single hire. My manager actually told me the other day like my position was originally meant to be for like a senior engineer, but he went and chose me because he's like, oh, we want someone with fresh ideas and like a new mind for the team. So
So
I kind
that's
of
pretty
yeah
cool,
like
actually. Yeah,
it's cool, but like it puts a little bit of pressure on me. I gotta be very like innovative at work. It's
for
kind of
sure.
hard because like all this time I just felt like I've been playing catch up, because the rest of my team is all like level 3, level 4 engineers, and I'm just like here like a level 1, just like how does this work? How does this work?
Yeah,
But slowly now I've been working 9 months, so I'd say in the past few months, I've really gotten the hang of it. I've sort of captured the bigger picture of what it is that we do. And actually, recently I've been put on some like new development projects. So those have been pretty interesting for me. I would say that's more of what my expectations were for coming into this job. So I'm glad that it's finally turning around. So yeah, maybe like for people who are listening, I don't know if your guys' like software engineering jobs went the same or not. I know more commonly is like big cohorts. Like Anish, I think you were hired into a cohort, right?
yeah. I think the interesting part is, you see a lot of companies nowadays, I think, especially doing what your team did, right? In this case, they choose to hire, younger talent versus a senior engineer. And I think the interesting part that comes with that, obviously, the benefit, especially during a time when the market is so crappy, and so unpredictable.
Mm.
I think a lot of these teams in long-standing companies are choosing to hire cheaper talent. That's basically what it is, right? You're hiring like cheaper talent, and they see the investment more as a time investment, investing and teaching like younger guys rather than having a monetary investment, right? Of just hiring somebody who has like 10 years on the job. But yeah, anyways, yeah, I'm in a cohort. I was in a cohort in my internship at the same company that I do work at now. Um, and you know, it's interesting because the cohort's fairly new. So obviously, when you have a very relatively new program, there's some kinks that need to be ironed out and whatnot. And it's difficult to be part of something. Sometimes that's very early stages. Because you got to put up with some growing pains in the program stuff. I think maybe in 2 years this program will be fully polished out. And I also understand that's like being part of this program. I have a responsibility to future people in the cohort, like in the upcoming years, to make sure that the kinks get ironed out before then. But yeah, it's nice to have people. Uh, I don't I don't think you mentioned that there are that many young people in your program, right? In where you work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, no program, like I said, but yeah, even just on my team, I think the next youngest person is like 28 or 29. So yeah, like a good 5 6 year difference. I'm like really like the baby of my team in that sense. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't at work at least I don't really get to interact with people my age. I see some around the office, but they're not really on my team or like even in my department. Like if I had to guess, they're probably in like the aero division because most of my office is aero. It's just like my small sector that's industrial automation.
yeah. So I guess the advantage of that is you can you go to work and you can really lock in. You learn a lot because
Yeah,
everyone there probably has like almost like quadruple, if not more, the amount of experience you have. So you learn a lot, right? But then
yeah, for sure.
every now and then, when you need to relate to someone or you want to solve a problem together, kind of rather
Yeah,
than just asking for guidance, you don't
yeah.
really have that luxury, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's exactly the predicament. Like it's two sides of the coin. There's the
yeah,
good in the sense that um, yeah, I can always reach out for help from people that will like 100% know something better than I do. But it would be nice to have someone that I could relate to in how it's going for me right now. But yeah,
Right. Yeah. Tell me about the last 2 weeks. I know you mentioned that you're being slaving away, right? You're working like
yeah,
almost like
dude,
60,
yeah,
70 hour weeks or something,
yeah. Probably last 2 weeks, I'd say I've on average, yeah, 55, 60 hours probably at least.
which is
Um,
crazy, right? In terms of software engineer, usually, by the way, it's 55 to 60 hours is unheard of.
yeah,
But yeah,
unless you're at some like quant company or
at
something,
or
yeah,
a startup, yeah.
yeah,
But continue,
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty unheard of. But I mean, honestly, it just because the rest of my team has such a grind set mentality. Like, I wouldn't say like I feel pressured to like keep up with them and do it like that, but genuinely like um, there is just that much that needs to be done. I don't know if maybe like our team is just lacking in terms of the amount of people we have, amount of engineers, but there's just so much that's always on everyone's plate. So yeah, it just piles up, and especially I'm probably working a little bit like less efficiently and a little bit slower than most of the other engineers.
Right.
Most of the other engineers are right. So yeah, it's taking me a little bit more time to get things done. But I mean, honestly, like one of the things about new grad is like I don't have homework, I don't have tests. Like it is just like work. So it doesn't feel like too much extra of my time being spent on it. Because honestly, outside of work, like all I do is like go to the gym and like play basketball and shit like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, so yeah, for me, it's a little bit different, right? Because you know, I'm almost going through a whole 1 year training program, pretty much, which is a little at times it can be a little bit irritating, right? Because I mean, you went to four. It's almost like you like pay for a 4 year degree. It's not cheap, by the way. We went to out of state school for both of us, right?
Yeah.
So you're spending like almost like 200 grand for your education, and then you come to a company and you realize how little you know, and going through that first year where it's like, oh my god, like I paid this much for my degree, and now I still got to learn, right? And I mean, not saying that learning, like having to learn, is a bad thing, but I think sometimes when you graduate, you would almost prefer the learning to come through almost like a kinesthetic, almost experience type of way, rather than what I'm doing, which is basically just trainings for the most part.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I guess you just got to be patient. I think. Did you? I know you mentioned that now you're starting to like it, obviously, but
Yeah.
what do you think about people who they start their job, or kids who start their job and immediately it doesn't seem like like they like it or they're good at
Hmm.
it? What do you think about the imposter syndrome feeling?
Oh
Do you
yeah.
think it's normal? And what
I
would you
mean,
say about it in your experience?
yeah, I mean, in my experience, that's exactly how I felt at the start. Probably the first like 6 months even. I just felt like wow, this is not what I signed up for. Like this is not what I thought working full time would be like, especially like in this field. Um, but yeah, as far as also imposter syndrome, like being the young person on the team and stuff, I'm always like, wow, why am I even here? Like, what am I contributing as an engineer to this team?
Right.
But I guess the only thing I can say after making it past that part is, like, truly, like, once you get that understanding, everything starts clicking. Like, it just starts going so much smoother, and that's what I've seen in the past. Yeah, like 3 4 months. Um, the transition was like pretty seamless. One day it just it just started clicking, and also probably heavily depends on what projects you get put on. Like at first, like being like a new grad, new hire, they you don't have any expertise on the systems or anything like that, right? So they kind of just put you on some like one-off like odd projects. So I was working on those at the start, and I didn't really like see the bigger picture for what they were being used for or anything. I just thought it was just like some menial like tasks that they were just giving me, some busy work. But yeah, recently I've been on some like important like new developments. So I think yeah, also if you realize like the greater impact of what you're working on, like you'll be more driven to actually work on it, and
Yeah,
you'll
for sure.
naturally just start to enjoy it more the more you understand it. So yeah, it's
Right.
more sticking to it, and you'll probably be good. because I think for any job really, especially right out of college, like giving up like just a few months in because you feel like it's not the one or like it's not what you wanted is a bit too early. You should probably stick with it a little bit longer, and maybe you'll grow to like it, maybe you won't, but it's a decision you can come through later. I say you should at least stick around for like a year just to see how it actually goes.
Yeah, I think the way that I would think about it is, I think, like, if you don't have that imposter syndrome, even within the first year and a half of your job, you're either really freaking good at your job or you're at the wrong place, right? I think,
Yeah,
those growing pains are normal. And yeah, uh, I think that's the right way to look at it for sure.
yeah,
Um, yeah, how about living this far away from home though? Look, how does that feel? Or, you know,
yeah. So I mean, I guess living away from home's not new. I guess we've both been doing that for all of college. Like, what
yeah,
in
but
college
it's
we'd probably
different
go
though. It
home.
feels different. Yeah,
Yeah, it definitely feels different. There's a lot more adult responsibilities that we've got to tend to now. Um, I would say, yeah, the distance from home is pretty annoying. You know, like calling my friends back home or talking to my parents or brother back home is like right now it's a 3 hour difference. So just that right there is kind of weird for timing. And then yeah, like if I ever want to go back home, aside from like having to take PTO or whatever, it's a whole last like 5 hour flight back, and then it's like pretty much eats up a whole day just like traveling. So uh, it is weird living far from home, but it's also a nice sense of like freedom and like independence. I think I got that in college, I guess, but it's nice being out here like fully like financially independent. I think it's kind of a blessing to be able to say that like right after college that we can be like fully financially independent. Like um, you never really realize how many expenses there truly are to being an
back.
adult until like you get hit with them. Like
Yeah,
man, like car insurance has been eating away at my bank account. I don't know
yeah.
why. I think I might have messed something up maybe. But I've been paying like
No, you're not messing anything up. How much you paying a month? I pay like $200, 200 more than that.
200 a month.
Yeah.
You might have messed something up, bro. Yo, that is
Nah,
crazy.
nah, nah, nah. I think it's California though. And you know what the craziest part is? Females get uh or women get they get car insurance like for cheaper than we do.
What? No way.
Yeah, it's something crazy, like women get a cheaper rate or something.
I didn't know
Which
that. I thought it
like,
was
no
nearly
offense,
the price.
to women or anything. I just don't think that there's any, like, bearing for that. But
Yeah, I feel like like gender shouldn't be a factor for anything like that. But
I,
I think
yeah, I
like
don't think so.
age is a valid factor. I think that's probably why our car insurance is like super high right now. As like young drivers like insured on our own for the first time, they're gonna jack those prices up until like we
Yeah, I
prove
guess
that
the
we're
argument is
affordable.
that, like men are more susceptible to do something stupid, right? And, like,
Could be,
like
yeah,
race their friends or do something stupid.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's probably because of that, but who
yeah,
knows? Um, but yeah, with that, I guess, you want to start like diving into the topic for today. Maybe give them a little glimpse of what we're going to talk about, and I can get us started, and we'll go back and forth and debate it a little bit.
yeah, yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, this first episode, like we're gonna hone in on like the topic of tariffs and the political and economic bearings that they've had so far. So yeah, Anisha's gonna give like a little bit of a background on how we've gotten to this point so far. So yeah, if you want to start with that.
Yeah. Let me preface this by saying that we're not experts in any way. This
Yeah,
is simply just, us reading, like, content on the subject, and, giving our take on it, and,
yeah.
you know
And we're just
taking it.
trying to
Okay,
get
go
more
ahead.
educated on these topics as well as like now they're starting to actually impact us.
For sure, yeah. And, like, I'm not gonna say that everything we say is gonna be 100% right. I think that would be kind of
Yeah, definitely not.
unrealistic. But I will say, the stuff that, we've learned by studying this topic, and, we'll go a little bit deeper into that, hence the name. And if this podcast grows big enough, maybe, I know we're interested in starting social media up on it too. So maybe you guys can give your opinion in the comments and stuff like that and get it going with that.
Yeah.
But I'll start it off with a brief history. First, a definition, um, because I think that's important. There's a clip floating around of Trump saying what the definition what the definition of a podcast is, and he says it's the definition is a tax on foreign countries. Which, if you really think about it, that's not necessarily true. Um,
Right.
the tax is being imposed on imports.
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of that cost is going to fall to corporations who need those imported goods. One, and then two, obviously the consumer, right?
Yeah.
So I think that definition is really important. We learn about tariffs during like the Boston Tea Party and whatever nonsense like in fourth grade, but up until then, they've always been a part of U.S. economic policy. But I think obviously with Trump's whole MAGA America First plan, it's come to the forefront again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so typically, governments would impose a tariff for two main reasons, right? One would be generating revenue, and two would be protecting domestic industries, right?
Right.
And that's the backbone of Trump's like whole America First policy. He wants to bring back at least some make waves in some type of domestic production, right? And I think it was a realization to all of us how fragile and how dependent we are on other countries during COVID, right? Which, by the
Yeah.
way, I think Trump also knows that he didn't handle the right way
Yeah.
when COVID was
Definitely.
going on. But we'll start it like around when before COVID happened, because COVID is something that nobody could have really predicted for, and really threw a wrench in a lot of I think what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so in 2018, this is when like the whole trade war began. Trump starts by imposing tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum, right? Which is pretty much a big deal because that's going to be a lot of your construction, your automobiles. It's a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then he imposes approximately 25% tariffs in general across all Chinese goods. It's about
Yeah.
$34 billion within that year, right? 2018. And
Yeah.
obviously, China retaliates with their own set of tariffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then by 2019, he's tariffed almost $360 billion worth of Chinese imports, and in exchange, China has tariffed about 110 billion of U.S. exports.
Right.
And then by 2020, before COVID, I guess, right, like the waters kind of like softened a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and China agreed to increase, purchasing more U.S. agricultural goods, which is, by the way, and this is going to be important later. That's majority of what China um, imports from the U.S. And in exchange, they say that they're going to handle a lot of the intellectual property theft and stealing data, the problems that Trump, brings up when he imposes these tariffs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the result of all this, the reason I'm saying all this is one for people who might be like us and weren't paying attention 2017 when we were still in high school, right?
Yeah.
um, but the result of all this, he generates about $70 billion in tariff revenue, but almost half of it, like $28 billion, he has to use to pay back farmers, because when China retaliated with their own set of tariffs, U.S. agriculture and like crops and sale of crops and all that stuff suffered. So he basically has to use damage control of about $28 billion. So half of the tariff revenue is almost gone, right? Just like that. And
Mm-hmm.
by imposing tariffs on steel and aluminum, he strains ties with Canada and Mexico, as well as the European Union, which is very like good for us, I would say. Um, and then he basically renegotiates the NAFTA, which is made in I think the late '90s, uh, or early '90s. Yeah, it was made in the early '90s. NAFTA, by the way, stands for North American Free Trade Agreement.
Yep.
And I think whoever I don't recall who was who was the president at that time, but yeah, I think I don't remember. But I think what their intention was at that point in time, yeah, I think their intention at that point in time was to have North America operate as one unit, right? They wanted to encourage trade between Canada and Mexico and the U.S. And by doing that, I mean, they succeeded in their plan. The trade tripled between 1993 and 2017 when Trump started his new set of tariffs, right? Um, so yeah, with that, I mean, he renegotiates it to, and now it's called the U.S. Mexico Canada Agreement, and it's just small things that he wants to adjust. One of the major ones is for automobiles because companies like Ford move manufacturing to Mexico for cheaper labor, and which
Yep.
is a very usual thing to do. But he basically says that in order for automobiles to be exempt from tariffs, they have to be 75% made in North America. So obviously, cars who aren't completely American cars like Ford, General Motors, obviously, are not going to be, other than those major car vendors, it's not going to be exempt from tariffs. And he
Mhm.
also includes a sunset clause saying that, every 6 years it can be reviewed, which we don't even really know if it's going to be valid or not, considering every 4 years the president changes, and if especially if it's from a different political party, a lot of times it just undo what the previous one did.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the implications of that too. But with that, you want to go over, like, I guess, what his new set of tariff laws
Yeah.
are prior to what the huge waves he's been making in the last week that's been taking all of our portfolios.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess hopefully most of you guys have heard about it now. But yeah, Trump, since coming into office, has imposed a ton of new tariffs. So earlier in February of this year, the Trump administration imposed 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada and 10% on China. I think the main effort there was to dampen undocumented immigration and also drug trafficking. So within just 2 days of that, the tariffs against Mexico and Canada were paused to engage in some negotiations. And at this point is when China retaliated with their own set of tariffs against the U.S. And then by February 10th, Trump had removed the prior exemptions from 2018 on steel and increased aluminum to 25% from originally 10%. And so this then caused Canada and Mexico to retaliate with their own set of tariffs against the U.S. as well.
Yeah,
But yeah, after that, President Trump began deliberating with Claudia Sheinbaum and Justin Trudeau to alleviate tensions within like our fellow North American nations. So that's sort of how his new tariff laws have come into play. And I guess now we'll kind of go over his formula, which is a big topic of interest.
right.
For,
I think his formula. I think you see a lot of economists, expert economists, and You know, um, I wouldn't say I'm a Trump supporter by any means, but I think during this presidential campaign, it was clear, at least just directly Trump versus Kamala, it seemed like from the average person viewing how both of them talked, right? I think most would agree that what Trump was talking about seemed more like he knew what he was talking about. Right? That's what my view on it was. I think a lot of the arguments, I think for our friends who voted Kamala and whatnot, who were Democrats, they said that they were banking on the fact that she was surrounded by a more competent team than Trump, which may or may not be true, especially looking at this formula now. But basically, he has this formula, and he announced this, I think, on April 4th. And this is basically his method of calculating what he presumes to be what other countries are tariffing us at, right? So basically, he thinks that, and I think for the average person, if you look at the way he calculates these tariffs, I think it doesn't make any sense at all. And that's what a lot of economists are saying. Um, so basically, what he did is he took the U.S. trade deficit, which is basically the all the imports minus the amount that they export to a particular country, and he divided by the total amount the U.S. imports from that country. Um, so I think for China, it was 67%. is what he calculated. And from that, he said he's going to charge countries half of what he calculates using this formula.
Mm.
And by doing this, his main goals are one, to reduce trade deficits, which, by the way, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Two, he wants to use it as a bargaining chip, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, with Mexico, I think he made it pretty clear that he wants to use these tariffs as a method of securing the border and reducing drug trafficking. And with China, again, he wants to reduce intellectual property theft.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and the third thing, the major thing, right, is encouraging domestic production, and I think you saw this with before he even released this formula. I think it was back in February. It might be wrong. Uh, that TSMC invested almost like $100 million in fab labs in
Mm.
the U.S. So I guess it might be working a little bit. Also, $100 million is barely a dent, but
Yeah.
I guess it's moving in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about this formula? Obviously, economists have said it's pretty dumb. Why do you think it's ignorant and it's not complex enough that he's calculating other countries' tariffs just using the trade deficit?
Yeah. So like just using the trade deficit alone, like you're like getting tunnel vision on like purely imports and exports, right? There's so many other like political and economical factors that go into um, negotiations and trade between countries. It's not as simple as that. I guess I can't really speak on it as much, but as like expert economists have said, um, it's the way that he's calculating this formula right now is just not accounting for as many of the factors as it should be. Pretty much. I
Yeah,
wish I can't really tell you guys like what the all the factors should be, but
yeah.
it's
I think
definitely
from a broad perspective, I think then obviously we import a lot of stuff needed for technology production, right? And I think you would agree that U.S. is a pretty large consumer of consumer electronics, right?
yeah,
And labor being cheap in China, I think every one of the major tech companies have moved production there over
yeah,
the last couple of decades, right?
hmm
And then you think about China importing agricultural goods. Obviously there's certain, I don't know exactly what they get from us in terms of like crops and like goods like that. But I would assume that majority of these goods that we're giving them, they could probably, like, they could really probably substitute and get our stuff from, you know, other countries, right? And I
yeah,
feel like
yeah,
when it comes to that, I think China understands that the U.S. having the U.S. being on good terms with the U.S. is important, for the global supply chain and just in
yeah,
general for economic trade policy, right?
yeah.
And I think Trump also understands that China's you know pretty important too. I think if either U.S. or China just vanished, like a lot of shit would go down, right?
Hell yeah,
Um, but I think in terms of just calculating based on imports and exports, it's just not complex enough, right? And I don't know
yeah,
why or who suggested this to him, but it doesn't make much sense to me.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, what do you think about like obviously we had mentioned that when a country imposes tariffs like this, corporations have to take the majority of that hit, right? When they pay, majority of like a higher price for these important goods. But
yeah,
people forget that, a lot of this is going to affect us too, right? Pretty soon.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
iPhone's going
It,
to be like $2,000 now instead
yeah,
of
yeah.
1,000.
It'll all
Um,
lead back to the consumers. Like at the end of the day, um,
right.
those corporations they're like you said having to pay like upfront that tariff and that tax, but at the end of the day, what's that going to do? It's going to cause them to increase, how much they're charging the U.S. consumers for their product, and so yeah, at the end of the day, we will be paying more. Like you said, yeah, iPhones could be going up to like 2.5K, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like it's just crazy how much impact can have on like the average U.S. consumer.
Right. Um, what do you think about income taxes versus tariffs. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
yeah. I mean, yeah. I'll let you. But obviously, tariffs they come with a certain sort of ability, right? But when you really think about it from the average consumer who might not be as interested in it, they don't really care. They're paying a higher price anyway. One twenty four hour paycheck, one
yeah, yeah, yeah,
coming
yo,
from
yo.
the
Wait,
cost of goods, right? So
hold
what
on.
do you think?
Your mic just like fully went stupid for that.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's good now.
All right, yeah. So what I was saying is, for the average consumer who might not be as educated, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that the fact that the money's not coming straight out of their paycheck, right?
hmm
And like an income tax, and instead it's just it's a higher cost of goods now. Do you think the average consumer would even notice? And do you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
there is really a stark difference between tariffing imported goods and just charging a higher income tax rate for
Yeah.
U.S. citizens?
Yeah. So on like on the average consumer's like genuine like worth, probably not really that much of a difference, but from how they view it is where the difference comes in. So like if like your income tax were increased, right, your paychecks would just essentially go like be less being deposited into your bank account versus as the prices of goods goes up. At that point, your spending that you like are physically seeing as you go like to the grocery store or whatever it may be, like as you're filling up gas, you see you're paying like more than you were like last week. Like that's going to raise some alarms, I think, to the average consumer who's maybe not like as educated on what's going on, compared to yeah, if they were to just increase income tax, you would just see like less in your bank account if you even check. I feel like some people probably don't even check like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from a tariff perspective, like I wonder what would happen if what if he lowered the income tax rate and increased tariffs a little bit more? Why wouldn't he just do that, right?
Lower the income tax rate but
If he,
increase tariffs
like,
on.
I'm just
Well,
spitballing here, but
that's okay. Yeah, like to like the U.S. citizen, yeah, sure, like it would balance out. But increasing tariffs, like that's still a one way thing for whatever country that the tariff is hitting.
right. I'm saying like if he really wants to put like certain countries in a bind, or if he wants to, we had mentioned that like for example for Mexico, he wants to get them to secure the border and whatnot. Do
Yeah,
you think that there's an advantage in maybe having, because I feel like the way I look at it, income tax, I mean, the money's coming out of the consumer's pocket either way, right?
yeah, yeah,
Well, at least with tariffs, you get a bargaining chip with the countries, right?
hmm
And
yeah,
that you put pressure on,
yeah.
domestic industries to increase their,
No,
like,
100%. Yeah,
domestic production, right? So honestly,
hundred
you could even
percent.
argue that like tariffs are out of like most of the policies when it comes to economic policy, like it's actually one of the better options, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I can agree with that. I can see like, um, it's that bargaining chip that you keep mentioning. Like it's like a benefit that we could be getting out of these tariffs. It's could be seen as like a like a bullying type of tactic, but I
yeah,
mean there is strategy behind the madness. Like there's a reason I think that he's been pushing it like so heavily. Like I think really he is trying to um, you know up the state of our country now and just make us maybe like even more independent. Like I know earlier we talked about encouraging like domestic production. That's like something that we are very reliant on, especially China for like tons of manufacturing. So I think in his eyes, like if we could get that some of that transferred over to here and do it here ourselves, like we'll look like like just like stronger as a nation
yeah,
and
I
more
agree.
like independent.
I agree. And I think not that I'm in support of this of his slogan or like whenever he says "Make America Great Again," a lot of people get pissed when they hear that because it kind of gives a connotation that America is not great at the moment, right? But I think what he's really trying to say is America could be better, right?
Yeah,
I think having other countries bully you around, and let's be real, like China is probably not tariffing us at 67%, but they're definitely getting away with some unfair stuff that I think maybe other presidents. He's basically what he's doing is he's gambling right now, right? Um, because he's hoping that while other presidents might just, they'll be scared, put pressure on other countries the way he is,
Yeah,
he's saying, you know what, yeah, like people's portfolios, unfortunately, like hopefully people, for the people like that are retiring this year, that might be a bind for you, right?
yeah,
I'm
that's
glad that
not
we
a
don't
great
have to deal with that. I have friends who've been investing their internship money and
time.
stuff for the past couple of years, and they've lost north of 10 grand, 20 grand, almost like a car. And I haven't been investing that much because I spent most of my internship money. But like when it comes to most of that stuff, that could be rough. But I think his ideology when it comes to this stuff is, he's saying that, like, yeah, it might be rough for a couple months, maybe even a year,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
when we come to the end of the tunnel, hopefully, as a nation,
yeah,
we'll be stronger, and
yeah.
people won't push us around, right?
Yep. The market is always cyclical. Like, I mean, obviously, like you said, if you're retiring right now, that's pretty shady timing. But
Yeah,
for those of us that are still like having holding our investments long term, like it's always cyclical. It's gonna go back up, regardless of how much he may screw it up at this point in time. And like even once his term is done, the next party will come in, and like you said earlier, like they usually just go and undo a bunch of shit
yeah,
that the previous
yeah.
president did. So there will be like market fixing, and everything will likely trend back in the way that it was before. But yeah, it's pretty ass right now. My portfolio is all red. Actually, it's been green like this week.
It's a little bit green now, right? You want to talk
Yeah.
about what he did, a couple of days ago? Why a
Mhm.
lot of people's portfolios might have come up for water a little bit.
Yeah. So I think like earlier in the week, I can't remember which day, but he pretty much put up a 90-day pause on tariffs for every country except China, funnily enough.
Yeah,
He put a 90-day pause on that just to, because everyone was freaking out about the market, thinking it's going to be like a whole new Depression and everything. So he put up a 90-day pause. It started things trending a little bit more green. But in addition to that, I think he also upped the tariffs on China up to 125%, which is
it's
absolutely crazy.
insane, insane.
125% is crazy. Like that is why
Yeah,
like people are freaking out about an iPhone being 2.5K. Like
yeah,
that's a crazy
yeah.
number.
And honestly, I hope it doesn't he doesn't keep the rate at that long enough for us to actually see the effect of it. You want to talk about that a little bit? So like we know, like obviously, like I said, the duality of these political parties, right? And I
Mhm.
think a lot of times one could even argue that, having these political parties, it's like sometimes it's a double edged sword, right? Obviously, you get varying opinions, and I think every major political idea, whether it's DEI, abortion, whatever the case might be, there's a genuine argument for both sides. Whether whichever side you choose to agree with, there's a genuine argument for both sides, and I think if you don't agree with that, then you're just lying.
Yeah.
Um, but do we think that these tariffs are going to stick around long enough for us to even see the benefit of it? Because I'll mention this quick thing that I think in his first term they had generated $80 billion, 70 to $80 billion worth of tariff revenue, right?
Mhm.
Half of which, or roughly half of which, went back to the farmers to
Right. Yeah.
subsidize farming and whatnot to deal with the effect of those retaliatory tariffs from China,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So $80 billion in tariff revenue. Um, so for reference, um, Trump's new set of tariffs, if he keeps at it, is projected to generate about 300 to $400 billion
Hmm.
annually, right? And say, for example, if he kept this policy the way it is for the next 10 years, um, the U.S.'s debt is supposed to reach about $50 trillion, right? And he will gain a revenue of approximately like 8% of that, right? So the
Hmm.
concept of that tariff revenue being used to, kind of soften the blow of this ever increasing amount of debt that the US is amounting, like it's not really going to make a dent, right? So I
No.
think that reasoning for these tariffs is out the window. So what it really comes down to is, you know, increasing domestic production, and using it as a tool for compromise. Obviously, when you get into these negotiations, and he knows this, you're not going to get everything you ask for in any negotiation, right?
Yeah.
Do we think he's going to keep these tariffs long enough for us to see that increase in domestic production that we want to see as a country? Do we even think it's going to be, long enough, or do you think it's possibility, like he gets what he wants from China when it comes to the intellectual property decrease, the theft
Yeah.
decrease, and securing the border? I think those are his, major concerns. Do we think the tariffs are even going to stick long enough
Mm.
for us
So
to see like major increase in domestic production?
yeah, so I guess I don't know what he's aiming for in his sense of like increasing domestic production. Like, what does he want? Like us to be fully self sufficient? Like that's just unrealistic, first of all. So I
Yeah,
mean, I don't think that's even what he's shooting for. But um, I'd say like we can definitely like a noticeable increase in domestic production. I know already a few like German brand car companies like Mercedes Benz and Audi, I think, have begun manufacturing in the U.S. because the tariffs that would have been on their imported cars would have like probably drastically changed the amount of U.S. consumers that would even purchase like German vehicles anymore. Like no matter like the name brand status. Um, like it's just too like it's an unrealistic amount to pay for it. So they've started shifting manufacturing to here to avoid those tariffs, and that is part of Trump's plan. And I guess in that sense, it's working, and it is what he wants to see. But yeah, I guess I'm not really sure how far he wants to take it. But as far as like how long the tariffs will stick, I personally don't think they'll like stick too long. Like he knows like
I agree.
he'll lose a lot of his popularity and his presidential ratings will definitely tank if we just keep seeing red in the market. Like even his like most loyal supporters will be like, okay, now this guy's just screwing up everything. Like
Yeah.
after a certain point, he's got to find the fold and
Right.
get back on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add for today, or anything else that you want to talk about?
I think we covered a good amount. Like for these podcasts, we're trying to aim for, we're trying to keep it like under an hour. People's brains are
Yeah.
pretty cooked. Attention
Yeah.
spans are low nowadays, so we don't want to have it drag too long. But yeah, that was a good discussion. I like
Yeah.
going.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think with that, I think we'll close for today. Like we said, expect for people who are actually tuning in, expect somewhat rotating topic schedule. We'll have some episodes, where we talk about sports. Obviously, I think we're both huge, at least for me, basketball and football fans. I know Denal is a huge basketball and football fan too.
yeah,
But other than just reporting on things that we see and stuff, hopefully we make these some of these things like more engaging for you, for the viewer or the listener, such that they can think about it also, which is what we're trying to um, strive for. But yeah, for that, I guess we can say goodbye for today, and thank you guys for tuning in.
yeah.